So many playwrights simply write from dialogue. In all those script consultations that I've done through the years, I can tell immediately if a playwright is writing from dialogue because there is no inherent action there. So I want you to stop writing from dialogue. It is a big, huge mistake. It doesn't work. There is no dramatic action that is inherently built into the play if you simply write from dialogue. And you don't want to retrofit and go back and put all that stuff in, or worse, have a director put it in when you don't want it there. So the solution to the big mistake of writing from dialogue is to write an emotional event map before you write one line of dialogue. Yes, before you write one line of dialogue, you need to build an emotional event map. And this is what an emotional event map is. Okay, an emotional event map contains all the action that happens between the characters and all the action that happens around the characters. So what happens between the characters, there's a fight, there's an argument, one character is trying to change the other character. That is where action is happening between the characters. And when things happen around the characters, let's say a glass window breaks or chandelier falls, boom, that creates focus. So when you have characters fighting, struggling, seducing, trying to change each other, there is inherent action, and that is what pulls focus on stage. That and boom, events when a chandelier falls or something happens on stage. That pulls focus, and that is your only tool that you have as a playwright to pull focus. A filmmaker can use the camera and zoom in on someone's nose, right? But you can't do it as a playwright. All you have is the action between the characters and boom, things happening around the characters, the events. So what you need to do is you need to write an emotional event map where you outline this out. You know, they're fighting about this at the beginning of the play. Then boom, this thing happens. Then they're fighting about this issue. Then this person comes in and they're arguing or they're trying to figure out, or this one is seducing that one, but some sort of action that is happening between these characters. It is so important. And then, boom, you do the first scene. And the second scene needs to top the first scene in some way. Okay, it might be amped up more or maybe go to another world or land, but something must be different. Same thing, what's happening between the characters. Boom, what are they fighting for? Boom, 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 boom. Something's happened around them, boom. Then you go to the third scene and it has to top the first two scenes in some way. The drama, the dramatic action needs to escalate. Boom, boom, boom. Same thing, what's happening between the characters. So how are they struggling? What's happening? Boom, 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 boom. What's happening around them? Boom. And then build this emotional map as an outline of the action and the escalating events in your play. And I know this sounds like a lot of work. It's not as much fun as just sitting down, oh, I gotta write some dialogue. This is great, I love it. I'm so good at writing dialogue. But that dialogue is empty and dead because there is no action attached to it. And I'm so passionate about this because it is so important. You have to build action and events into your plays. If not, your plays just sit there. They're just dialogue. They're boring. You want to go to sleep. We want to run out of the theater. Don't do that. Don't make that mistake of sitting down and writing from dialogue. Oh, wow, this is great dialogue. I'm so good with dialogue. No. Write the dialogue from your emotional event map, okay? You start your first scene. You know what the action is. You know what they're fighting for. You know who they are. And boom, since you know what they're fighting for, you can write the dialogue from there. And that is what works. So build this emotional event map. Boom, boom, boom. Escalating action until boom, you hit the climax, and then there's a resolution. But that's it. If you just write from dialogue, you're just not going to write a great play. And this is the truth. Or you'll be retrofitting your play, sticking action in for like 6,000 years, so you might as well write an emotional event map because it works. It absolutely works. So don't make the number one mistake of playwrights by writing from dialogue. Build a comprehensive, passionate, emotional event map with action and events, boom, and write the best play of your life. So as a playwright, you need to bring your plays to life. It cannot just be on the page because the page is just a story. And when it's brought to life, oh my God, super fun. But One of the things you'll discover when you bring it to life is that there's not enough action between the characters. There's a lot of talk. Oh my God, let's have something happen between the characters, conflict, fighting, or boom, maybe an event that happens around the characters. But it's really important because you got to remember, one of the most important principles of playwriting, period, is things have to happen on stage. It's not just words. It's not just stories from the past. No, don't do that. What is happening between your characters? What is happening around your characters? What is happening on stage? So the great thing about workshopping your play, you can make things happen on stage, especially if it's a lot of words. Really, really important. Let me do a little sidebar here now. So this whole thing about action is really important. It is the most important principle, in my humble opinion, in terms of playwriting. And often playwrights will write from words. You sit down, oh, I'm gonna write a play, and you start writing dialogue. Oh, nice dialogue. Isn't this dialogue great? I love it. Oh, this is wonderful. Dialogue, dialogue, dialogue. But you know what it's missing? It's missing action. It's missing something happening between them. And you need to start by writing from action. And one of the ways that I recommend that you do that is to write an emotional event map. It is so important that you build action and events into each scene. So what do I mean by action? Well, action basically is what happens between the characters, okay? So this character is fighting with this character, boom, 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 all this kind of stuff is happening between them. Okay, let's say one person wants to get some money from the other person doesn't want to give it to him, so there's all this back and forth. This is action. They're fighting. They're trying to change the other person. And this is so, so important if you're writing a play, and it needs to be built into the structure of the play. There needs to be action. They're fighting for something, or someone's seducing somebody to get something. They're trying to change the other characters. Another important thing about action is you have to make sure that the action of the play happens like almost immediately when the first scene starts. There needs to be some sort of conflict right off the bat. You don't want to wait 4 minutes. You need to have some sort of conflict, something kind of strange going on between some of the characters, because that pulls focus. It's funny, if you've ever been in a restaurant and somebody breaks a glass, everybody will just turn and look at the glass. Well, as a playwright, it is action that creates focus. You got to make sure things are happening between your characters, because if they're not happening between the characters, oh, our audience is going to go to sleep. They're just going to check out. This is not a film. In a film, filmmakers can use the camera lens to create focus. The only thing you can do as a playwright to create focus is to put in action, and then also events, which we'll talk about in a moment. But action is so important. Things happen in between, struggle between your characters. You need to build it into the structure of your play to write a great play. Now, the next thing, which is really important in terms of building the structure of the play, is to build in these events. Now, what is an event? An event is something that happens around the characters. Now, you don't have to do too many of these in a play, but it's really, really good that you put a couple things in, something happening around the characters. Let's say, these characters are away at a vacation retreat. Maybe there could be a thunderstorm, thunder and lightning as they're trying to work out their relationship issues. But put in these events around what's happening between these characters, because it's really fun. It's really fun to do things like that. Something can happen. A painting can fall off the wall, and they could discover something behind that could change, their relationship. I have no idea. I'm just throwing this out. But you need to, have something else happen on the stage around them, because that will also keep your audience involved. So you have action that happens between your characters built into the structure of the play, and then you have events that happen around the characters that also help pull focus and create these dramatic moments in your play. So this is really important for you to think about as you begin to structure a great play. So now we are going to talk about the most important part of this process. We're going to talk about building an emotional event map. So what the heck is an emotional event map? An emotional event map is an outline of the sequence of emotional events, that means action that happens between the characters, and the events that happen around the characters. So basically it's an outline of all the things that happen on stage. Because one of the most important principles of writing a great play, whether it be a 10-minute play or a full-length play, you need to make things happen on stage. So what you do in advance is to write out these actions and these events. You build your emotional event map with clear action, things that are happening between the characters, and with events that happen around the characters. So let me explain in more detail about the emotional event map. So I wrote this wonderful play called Conversations with Dog, and I worked with my dear friend Anthony J. Rubistello, who was on The Sopranos, and it was one of the most exciting experiences of my life. But let me outline what this play is and how it all works. So this play is about an angry playwright who is in a park and he gets in a fight with his girlfriend and they break up. So the first thing that happens is he's having a fight with his girlfriend. That's an emotional event, right? Fight between them. And finally they break up. That's another event. They break up and then she leaves crying and he's left alone feeling very sad. So very clear what happens. You get that? So here's what happens next. So this playwright is kind of miserable and he's sitting on the park bench. And then a giant dog, my dear friend Anthony J. Rubistello from The Sopranos, comes in dressed like this giant dog, and he is a dog sent from heaven to save this playwright. So he comes up towards him. We don't know that he's from heaven, and he barks. And the playwright says, "Get away." And then he barks again. Can you see that's very clear action? Dog barks, interrupts the playwright, X, Y, and Z. And the playwright says, "Get out of here, get out of here." And then the dog comes up closer, and then the dog gets really mean and starts growling and then chases the playwright all around the park till finally he traps the playwright under his big body and makes him rub his belly. Can you see how there are very clear actions and things that happen in this scene, right? Things are happening on stage. The dog is barking, they're running around. Finally the dog grabs him and throws him on the bench and, lies his head on him and says, "Rub my belly." And it's fantastic. So when you build your emotional event map, filled with action and events, an event is the dog chasing him around, right? It's also connected to the action of the dog wanting to get his belly rubbed, right? So it all links up. But it's really important that you write this emotional event map with clear action and clear events first. Do not start your play with dialogue. Write out the sequence of action and events first. One of the things you have to remember is that talking is not an action. An action is something where one character is trying to change the other character. Okay? A debate is not really action. They're just debating on ideas. It's just words. So they're not trying to change another person. Whereas something like where a fight, people are fighting, it's very clear they're trying to change the other person or hurt the other person. A big argument, on a relationship, they're trying to fight to get the other person to change their mind, to stay, because they're trying to, get them back because maybe they're leaving, right? Does it make sense? But it's really important for you to think about action that happens between the characters. Also a seduction scene where, a woman is trying to get a man to kiss her, right? Fantastic, very clear action and things happen. So think about actions and things that happen on stage. It is the most important thing, and write these into your emotional event map. It absolutely works, but it's really important that you make things happen on stage. Now, there are different philosophies about playwriting. There are I think they're called the panzers. They write by the seat of their pants. They just sit down and write, and wow, they write stuff. Oh, it's so much fun. It goes to new places, this and that. But often when they do that, or when you do that, it doesn't have the principles of playwriting built into it. And if the principles of playwriting aren't built into your play, no matter how interesting the dialogue is and how interesting the characters are, it's just not going to work. It's like trying to build a skyscraper in New York without having, a set of blueprints to build it. I don't know why playwrights do this all the time. They just write, and then they try to retrofit stuff. And I've read so many plays and they look like that. They just look retrofitted, and I can tell they never planned this play. They just had an idea about the beginning and often not even about the end, because the ending just is terrible. So you need to plan your play. And there's a specific way that I like to plan my plays and that I teach, and it's by creating an emotional event map. And I'm going to explain this briefly because it's really, really important if you're going to write a play. So basically what an emotional event map is an outline of the action that happens between the characters. Like, I'm trying to change you, I'm trying to change you, we're trying to change each other. Boom. That is what creates focus on stage. Characters going at it. Okay? This is not a film. There's no, camera that comes in and zooms in. No, we don't have that. We have to have struggle on stage, something happening on stage, and that will bring focus. So there can be struggling on stage, that's action, and then there could be an event, like maybe a chandelier falls, like in the Phantom of the Opera. Boom, that's a big event, right? But you need to make sure that you have action and maybe some events, but always action between the characters in your play, in every scene of your play. The next principle of building an emotional event map is to, boom, have a problem that needs to be solved within the first 4 minutes, have action between the characters struggling, boom, 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 and there needs to be an escalation. There needs to be an escalation to the end of the scene. And then each scene, as the play progresses, needs to top. Each scene, as the play progresses, needs to top the scene before it, and 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 the scene before it, leading to a boom, a climax where there's a big event, something happens, someone changes, and everything's different. Boom. But you need to plan out your play and build this with the action. What are they fighting for? This one is, fighting for this. He wants the money from you, and this one doesn't want to give him the money. And then boom, what happens? The chandelier falls. Wow, holy mackerel, boom. Next scene, okay, they're still fighting about money, but they're doing it in different ways. This one is going over and, talking to his friends and saying bad things about him, X, Y, and Z. And then the next scene, it escalates a little more and a little more and a little more. And they're fighting, things are going on. Other people are coming in, they're joining teams. And oh my God, it's getting all crazy. And then boom, a climax, boom, where something happens. And then a resolution where the problem is resolved. So in a nutshell, you need to outline what's happening between the characters, things, boom, that happen around the characters, the events, and you need to escalate the scenes, topping the scenes. Each one must top the play in another way. It doesn't necessarily have to be amping it up, but different, going through, trying to figure out the problem of the play. Whoa, boom, climax, and resolution. So, that is such an important principle of writing a great play. Do not sit down and just write from dialogue, because life doesn't happen from dialogue. It works the other way around. Stuff happens, you use the dialogue to get what you want. Does that make sense? It's so important. You cannot start with dialogue. You have to start with what are they fighting for? What is the conflict? What is going on here? Boom. And that will create the dialogue. And then build a beautiful emotional event map that tops itself, boom, 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 that leads to a climax, a big event, something happens, something changes, boom, people change, the problem goes away. So this is the hardest part of the entire process of writing a great play, and I want you to take the time to write a fantastic emotional event map before you start writing. Trust me on this. This absolutely works. As a playwright, you need to write from dramatic action of your characters first, not from dialogue. Because a lot of playwrights will sit down and they'll start writing dialogue. And then it becomes not organic. You have to justify the dialogue. Does it make sense? So as a playwright, you have to say, how can I write these so it is organic and congruent? And the way you do that, you have to step into your characters' heads, and we'll talk about that. So you have to build your play first with dramatic action and then write it, and we'll talk about how to do that. This is something I've talked about a little bit on the podcast, and it's a really important thing, and I keep refining it. So some of this is some old language, and I may look at it again. But I actually created this idea. Well, I actually did it for years, but then I created when I did my 28-day How to Write a Play in 28-Day seminar, and refined it, and people are really digging it because it really works. But what you do, this is something called an emotional event map. And what you do is you plan your play from the beginning, the middle, the end. Right? You write out the whole thing with clear events and clear actions and everything that happens before you even write it. before you even start doing the dog. I know it sounds crazy, but by doing this, your writing is going to be so much more congruent, and we'll talk about it. It's really not fun to do because a lot of playwrights really like to just be serendipitous, and there's something good about that. Like if you're doing a 10-minute play, you can be serendipitous. You can start the idea and let it come out, and then, oh, it might work, and then you can amp it up and make it work. But when you're doing a full-length play, you really have to remember the dramatic action that flows through it as opposed to retrofitting it into it and things like that. So it's really important. It really makes a big difference if you sit down and really plan it out, and that's scene by scene, even beat by beat, with the events that happen in the scene and the actions, what's going on, exactly, specifically. Okay, this is my friend. He passed away last year, Anthony Rubistello. He was on The Sopranos. And he was Tony Soprano's bodyguard, and he was on for like 5-6 years on the show. And he was just a mensch of a man. And we did a myriad of plays together. So this is an emotional event map from the first scene of one of the plays we did called Conversations with Dog. So let me read this to you. So basically, this is the emotional event map. Okay, first, you see angry playwright Ken, and he's fighting with his girlfriend in Central Park. So there's a big fight. They're fighting, bum, bum, bum. It starts off high intensity, bum, bum, bum. And she breaks up with him, emasculates him, and leaves. Boom. Clear stuff, boom, boom, boom. Great fun. Then a giant Sopranos actor playing a 300-pound dog, dressed in a full dog costume, enters, and he tries to playfully force Ken to play with him, right? By doing all these interesting things, but it's very active and fun. Ken refuses, goes to leave, and then the dog chases him, trying to eat him, chases him around, tries to eat him. So very clear actions. It's very actable. You could do it. We could all act it. Ken's freaked out, and he hides behind a tree. Okay. Then the dog starts to talk, which freaks everybody out. And he announces that he's from heaven, and he's there to save him, right? So these beats, clear. It's not just talking. It's I'm announcing, this is it, let's go, this is what's going to happen. Ken freaks out, tries to run away. The dog catches him, pulls him to the park bench, throws his body on top of him, traps him, and then demands that he rubs his belly. Ken refuses. The dog threatens again, and Ken rubs the belly. Right? So you see how that there are clear actions here: fight, emasculate, break up, chases, freak out. Clear things that happen. It's really not about talk. He does formally announce, but still, that's an event because he was a dog who was barking and I was talking. So it's an event that a dog talks, right? But you can see how there are all clear things that are happening in this, right? So if I were to give you this, you could write this. You could totally write this from your perspective, and it would totally work. You put the dialogue in, you put the whole thing in, maybe get clear on me, clear on the character. You can make it work. Easy peasy. Every scene must have strong actions in it. When you're putting together a full-length play, every scene must have a big event of some sort, and that event and things that happen around that event propels the action of the play. In this one scene, there's a big kiss where they fall in love. That's the big event in that scene. It's a huge thing, and now it propels the action. All of a sudden, they're together trying to figure out this problem. Things like that, or it could be a big fight, and they break up, and now he's alone figuring out his problem. But he's determined, whatever. But every scene needs to have some sort of event in it that will propel to the next scene. Does that make sense? Propel the character. And when you look at that, when you set up, it's great. And then you can put in actions. And talking is not an action. Discussing is the worst thing ever to do on stage. Let's discuss, it's the worst thing ever. I have a big thing about backstory. I try not to use it if I don't have to. And if you do have to do backstory, put it into action, or if the backstory is there in a dramatic event, then it can work. If it's a dark story that is really dramatic, then that can be an event. But you got to be careful with telling stories in the past, because if they're not really dramatic events, we're just going to go, why are you telling us this? Why? Why do we need to know this? And the reality is, if you have a guy who's a lawyer who looks kind of shady and a doctor who looks really nice, we will get that he's a doctor and he's a shady lawyer. We don't have to know the backstory of a shady lawyer. We don't have to know how good the doctor is. We'll see it. The actors embody it. We got it. Okay, let's go for the ride. It's interesting. It's fascinating to me. Yeah. And a simple story for backstory purposes, not an event, unless it's big, and if it's really important. A big fight is an event. Demanding and threatening is really great. I think seducing it's really not one action, it's a series of actions, but it's a great intention. My intention is seduce this person and get this information from them, because there's so many ways to go in and, ways to have it happen. Seducing is great. I love it on stage. I think when it's done well, it's so compelling, And another thing in terms of building this event map, every scene has to have a clear event that propels the action of the play, but every scene must also in some way top the other scene. It doesn't have to be amped up more, but it could be another way the problem is bad, or it could be another thing. Like in musicals, often they do this where they change the genre of the song, and then they still have the problem, and then over here another song. But at one level, when you build your map, it's really important to make sure that it's escalating in some way towards the climax, hopefully. The problem can't go away. It needs to escalate in some way, and there's a lot of different ways you can do it. It's not just amping it up. Amping up can work. Every scene must be unique in some way that somehow tops what was before. Does it make sense? I know that's a high bar to ask for, but in the plays that do that, it's the greatest thing. I went to see 2 years ago The Lifespan of a Fact by four guys wrote it. But this play, for me, it was perfect because it dealt with a real issue, real strong issue. But it was about a fact checker. It was so great. Daniel Radcliffe, he was so good, and I didn't think he was going to be good. He was a fact checker who was asked to fact check this essay by his publisher, who was Cherry Jones. And as he started to check the facts, he realized none of it was true. It was like, all right. And then he ends up, he contacts the writer, and the writer is really rude to him. And then finally he goes out to California because he has like a weekend to get this done, and shows up at his door, right? And then Cherry Jones ends up getting involved, and she flies out. But the whole thing was so beautiful because it just kept escalating, And I remember I sat literally, I was up in the balcony with Jen, and I was literally on the edge of my seat the whole time, on the edge going, this is so beautiful.
Wow.
Just so, because it just kept getting crazier and funnier, and it dealt with a real issue, like what is truth in journalism? It's a great play. It really is. It's wonderful. And it was a great production. But that's what you need to think about when you're plotting out your event map, is how can you make sure it escalates in an interesting and unique way as it builds towards the climax. I just did a podcast this week, and I was working on a script consultation, and I wrote, where's the wow moment, right? Because I do these real-time notes, and I never thought about that before. And that's another thing you need to put into your map. You need to have at least one wow moment, hopefully at the climax, but there can be other wow moments where things are unexpected. It's great theater when all of a sudden you've seen something, oh my God, that's crazy. And you go, whoa, and you literally, sometimes you even reel from what you see on stage because you're so involved. You go, oh my God, that's nuts. I love it. So you also want to think about that, at least at the climax, you have that be a wow moment where it's insanely amazing, something insanely amazing happens, but also elsewhere. We did a wonderful play about 3 years ago now. It was a lesbian love story, and it was about two women who knew each other when they were in high school, and they had a brief moment together, and it was wonderful. But in the course of the play, there was a kiss where they hook up and they kiss, and I was talking to the playwright, who was just the greatest, and I said, "This needs to be a real kiss. We need to really do this." So it was like a 90-second kiss where we just went through beat by beat by beat and spent hours, literally hours on it, so that it was totally real and totally compelling. And even in the talkback, people said, "How did you do that?" I said, "We just worked our tails off." But that kiss was a wow moment in that play. So you need to think about wow moments too, at least in the climax or leading to it, or something that will intensify what's going on. So wow moments are good. It's my thing of the week, because we need wow moments. Okay, and then build this emotional map with strong, clear actions, strong verbs. Okay, I have some strong verbs later. It's really important. You got to make things happen on stage in real time. So if it's a fight between a husband and a wife, he can break stuff, she can throw stuff. We did this one play, actually with the same playwright, where it was a major betrayal, but it was all set up. And so the wife thought that her professor husband had slept with his college professor and got her pregnant. It was all a ruse by the college, by the kid. But she believes it to be true, so she goes nuts. I directed her to throw everything in that room at him. Because if someone does that, you would just go, and it was great. And we set it up beautifully, and she went crazy. So it wasn't about words, like how to do this. It was like, I want to kill you. And it was so compelling and so fun and so real. Because when you're betrayed, especially when it comes in left field, you're not in control of anything, so that was just a fantastic one. But that's also me, because I love when plays end and the set is a mess. It's like one of my favorite things. Someone going to his therapist and complaining that his life is a mess is not a strong action. He's just complaining, right? Someone going to a therapist complaining about his life and then threatening to kill himself right there is a strong action. And I failed to mention this. A play, in my humble opinion, and I think it's true, is an emotional experience that you are building. You're building and creating an emotional experience. It's not to be read. Yes, you can publish your plays, but plays are live. And you have to write them to be alive. That'll make a difference too. Say, this is alive. What experience am I giving them that they're going to see and go, boom? It's just have stuff happen on stage. So create clear action and events and build this map. Take some time with it. Take a couple days, depending on what your hourly workflow is. And you'll love it. You will love it. And there's more to it though, okay? So here's the next piece of the puzzle. So when you're writing, okay, so you build your event map, okay? So when you're writing, write from the character's perspective. And we're going to talk about how to do this. What are they fighting for? What do they want? What's their intention? And what is the other character? What's their intention? What do they want? What are they fighting for? What are they fighting against? What are they trying to change and how? Or what are they trying to avoid? There's also avoid. Think about it. This character is trying to avoid having a fight. It's funny. In a relationship I was in, I used to always say, I don't want to fight. I just don't want to fight. That's the one thing I don't do. And I was fighting about not fighting. Is that the greatest thing? I was fighting about the thing I wanted to avoid. Is that the greatest thing? And one day it hit me. And I went, I could just stop that. Fantastic. Fantastic. But this is what you want your characters to be like. You know what I mean? Where they're avoiding or they're, but look at what they're trying to do, how they're trying to change the other person. What are they trying to have happen in the scene? Okay, and there's other things too. But when you really get clear on that, as if you're an actor, boy, is it great. I was an actor first before I started writing plays, and it really helped me because it was always about doing things. And thank God for it. It's great. I love it. 20 years ago, I wrote a play about my dating life because it was wacky. The play starts where there's a huge fight because he says the wrong thing, and his blind date beats the hell out of him, and it's the greatest thing ever. And at one point, she's on his back, pulling his hair, and he puts his hand and goes, "Waiter, check, please." It's the greatest thing ever. It's the greatest thing. But it's a great way to start the show to say he's having a problem with his love life. We got it. We totally get it. It's happening right now. We see it. We're not just hearing the character go, "Oh, I wish I could find a girl." We see it there. Now we're going to break this down a little bit. And how do you write from the character's perspective? So there's a couple things I want you to think about. You need to start with strong emotional states, not necessarily strong, but emotional states when they come into the scene. You need to say, where's this character coming from? Was it an annoying day at work where he's coming home? Right? Because that will affect how he communicates. And then let's say his wife is there. What was her day like? Maybe she works from home and maybe it was a hellacious day from home. Maybe she's not in the right state, right? She's in a funky state. And then let's say he's decided he wants to move. He's not happy where they live, X, Y, and Z. So his intention is that he wants to get her to agree to move. Okay, so you have a strong emotional state. He's kind of irritated at work. He's kind of scared maybe about talking to her about it. And he wants her to move with him. So here's some specific emotional states. These are kind of big: happy, joyful, ecstatic. I like irritated. It's always good. I like mad too. Miserable, depressed, lonely. Heartbroken is even better. Heartbroken. Angry is good. Mad. I like this one. Out of my mind, crazy. But these are just, clear emotional states that happen in a scene, but also they could come in that way. In the Past Perfect, the lesbian love story I directed, the show starts with the mother in a huge argument with the daughter, and it's great because while they're arguing, we get all the backstory. It's just really so beautiful. They're going at it, and mother and daughter, boom, and we're learning about them. And we go, wow, fantastic, great, great, great. And then here's some clear intentions. We're gonna kick some around in a second. I'm gonna get her to forgive me. Right? I want her to say, "I forgive you, Ken. You're a good person." Right? I want to make him kiss me. Right? A lot of ways to do that. I want to make him so uncomfortable he'll leave the room. That's really actable, right? How do you make someone so uncomfortable leave the room? I want to make her change her mind. That's kind of hard. Change her mind is like to get her to agree with my perspective. It's probably a better way to say I should change that. I want her to agree with me. It's really changing her mind. I'm going to force him to give me what I want. That's a little more powerful than I'm going to ask him to give me what I want. I'm going to force him to do it, right? Because this has to happen now. The stakes are that high. I'm going to seduce him. I'm going to threaten him and get him to tell me everything about the affair. So how can you threaten him? What you can do, you can put out a gun, you can hold a knife to his neck, you can say that you're going to tell his parents. There's millions of things you can do. But those are some intentions to think about. And then this is something that's really important, and it's an acting thing, and it's really great for directors. It's really super important. And it's a thing called a lifeline. And basically what a lifeline is what a character does in a context. So let's say a character is coming home from work. So I'll come home, I wash my hands, hang my key up on the wall, go into the other room, I'll take off my shoes at the door. I'll go into the other room because I touched my key. I have to wash my hands again. Right? This is a lifeline, right? Then I'll go and I'll take off my pants. I'll go run a bath. Let's say it's at the end of the day, so I'm going to take a bath, X, Y, and Z. But that's a specific ritual, like certain things that I do. So if you're having a scene between two people, husband and wife, and he wants to get her to move and she wants him to be a better husband, be nicer to her, whatever intention is. And he's coming home from work and he's kind of irritated, had a good day at work. What does he do? And you should write that stuff in as a playwright. You really should write it in, because you don't want someone not to see it, what people do if the director is not that good. Some directors like to talk and some directors don't understand how it works. But just write it in. They can use it or not use it, but you'll say, I want this to happen. It goes this, boom, 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 boom. When you get a sense of your character's lifelines, what they're doing, you can see it more clearly and you can get more ideas about it. Does it make sense? So it's not just dialogue, right? Because you have intention, emotional state, you have what I want from you, and you're going to be conflict. When you're choosing your intentions, how can you have them be very different? And also, to make a play dramatically fun, how can you make your characters, they use the term foils, but how can you make your characters very different? Very different. One believes one thing, one believes something else. One is intensely visual, one's intensely auditory. So he says, I see what you mean, and she doesn't. She can't hear it. It's interesting. So you can do that, look at those kinds of things. But even the auditory thing, that's coming from the inside out. What do they focus on? What do they believe? What do they see? And even further, if you want to go in terms of developing characters, what do they believe about relationships? What do they believe about X, Y, and Z? When you're building your characters to create more dramatic action, more fighting, is how are they so different? How do they believe things that are different, which causes them to go at it? In every scene, the characters should have their own specific lifeline, the things that they do in that particular situation, and that's their behavior. But that will help you see things clearer, and also it'll just round out the characters, and it's great. It's wonderful. Here's some examples. I love this. In a kitchen, a character is making a cake or an omelet or washing dishes or emptying an old drawer, right? Very specific things they could be doing. He could come home, she'd be in the kitchen, she's making a cake, or she could be emptying out that old drawer, which is great. She pulls out a big knife at the wrong time. There's so many things that could happen. It's great. Or in a diner, I love this. A man is eating fries by first dipping them in the ketchup bottle and then sucking on them while sipping a milkshake. Oh, it's a bizarre behavior, but it's unique. If it works for the character, it's fantastic. I once saw somebody doing that. So that's why I remembered it. It was just so whacked out. It's like, what's he doing? Just dipping it in the ketchup. It's crazy. Or a character is disturbed because the cushion is lumpy, right? And he's always trying to get comfortable, right? And then it says he finally takes out about 20 napkins and he sits on them. You see that? I used to be obsessed about the table if it wasn't level. I've gotten much better. I'm like, fuck it. I'd ask them and then they fix it, wouldn't work. And I'd end up putting something on it. It's crazy. Or you can add things together. So he could be doing this and it could also be, this could be driving me crazy also. It's fun. And then, the character's going to a party. She's doing her makeup, getting dressed while texting her friends, while posting pics, while she argues with her boyfriend. That's great stuff. And you should write that in. It's fun, So when you think about lifelines, it gives the characters more depth and you a more depth of what's possible. Because then her boyfriend may show up and she could throw her phone at her boyfriend, and then grab and take a picture of her boyfriend on the ground, knocked out. So, it's that kind of thing. I just invite you to try this because starting with dialogue is it's like trying to cook without turning the oven on. Does that make any sense? You gotta or bake. You gotta preheat the oven. It's really important. And once you do this, you will love this. It will love because your creativity will go ape, especially with the lifelines. I just love the lifelines. It's great. Your characters, I know for me, when I write, when you get clear on that stuff, your characters just sing. They just sing. They just start doing it. You're writing on, what are you doing? Oh my God. Because you're clear on where they're coming from, what they want, and that's great. So putting it all together real quick. So you write your emotional event map, okay? You add in the emotional starting stage of the scenes. You get clear on where they're coming in at the beginning of the scene. The characters, where are they? And what's good? It's always good to be irritated or something interesting, as opposed to, I'm watching TV. There's always something that can add to the drama or the comedy of it too, in terms of what they're doing. And it's fun when you find something because it can go down a whole nother road, which is really fun. And then make clear and powerful intentions. What do they want? How do they want to change the other person? What is the action they're doing? How do they go about doing, if they're seducing, what do they do first? They turn on the lights, bring out candles. What do? They turn on some music. What's the whole thing they want to do? See how that can work? If you say, she wants us to do something, then you go, how do you do that? And then you can start to, and then the lines will come out of all that, which is fun, It's fun. So it's just not you starting with these characters. I know where they are. They're fighting. Oh, great. That's wonderful. It's more specific and fun and unique. And it starts doing stuff by itself. And then look at your characters' lifelines. What are they doing? How are they doing it? And how will that add to the action? And you'll be surprised. There'll be a prop. All of a sudden she's holding up the rolling pin, on a line. And you go, oh, brilliant. Where'd that come from? It's because you thought about all that stuff, in the world and coming from inside out. And then start writing. And just write using the map, using all this stuff, and just start writing and let it go. Let it go wherever it wants to go. It's really fun. And, I worked with a woman on a musical, and we had 12 weeks, right, in my coaching. She finished an entire musical in 10 weeks. The music, everything, right? And she had maybe 2 hours a day. But what she did is she wrote an emotional event map, and everything was clear. And we did a whole thing where, what's the event of the scene that leads to the event of the song? How is the next song different? How is the next scene add? We did the whole dance together, right? So she had this real clear map. 10 weeks, she's done. It was mind-boggling, but it's because she did this work. And it's not like you can't riff off of this and let your creativity take you somewhere else. You can. Like people say, oh, well, it's so controlling. No, it's not. It's the opposite. There's so many options for your creativity to get more specific and have more fun. It's not general. That's my whole thing about playwriting in life and acting too, especially acting. I work with the directors. The more specific you are, the more great it is. Great stuff. So that's it. Make things happen on stage. So there you have it, the structure of a great play. You start with a problem that needs to be solved, a big problem that happens within the first 4 minutes. Build in action between the characters. Things are happening between the characters. Oh my God, this is wild. Things are happening. And then events, boom, around the characters, right? Then make sure that the scenes top each other, more and more and more and more, boom, to the climax. Make sure that within those scenes there is escalation. Escalation in the scene, escalation from scene to scene, right? Does that make sense? Escalation in the scene, escalation from scene to scene to scene. Escalation is the key to any great play, any great novel, any great, really, work of art. Even a painting, you look at it, it gets deeper and crazier and wonderful. Oh my God, what's going on here? It's taking me for a ride. And that's what you want to do with your play. You want to take the audience for a ride. Then it escalates and you get to this climax, boom. And the climax should be a wow moment. Like, wow, what just happened? Oh my God, I've never seen anything like that. That's incredible. Oh my God. Where the main character or characters change in some way, make a new choice, where something's different, something happens, something resolves the problem of the play. And then we have the resolution, boom. Keep that resolution to a page and a half. Just a page and a half and be done with it. There's one other thing I want to share with you. It's really important, and you've heard me say this probably many times before on the Playwriting Podcast. It's really important that you don't just sit down and write from dialogue. Now, we talked about the structure of the play, and we talked about, putting in the action. That's really important, is to build the play first. Say, this is going to happen between them, but don't start with a dialogue, because this action between the characters is going to create the dialogue. So if you just go in there and start creating dialogue, it's just not really going to be connected to something, and an actor is going to say, what the hell is going on here? And a director is going to say, oh my God, I got to put some action into this because it's not happening. But it's really important that you structure your play and put all those things, those actions, those things that the characters are fighting for, the events, boom, that happen around them, put them in the play. Build the structure into an emotional event map, put it all together, and then build from that. Don't write from dialogue. Writing from dialogue has no real dramatic action, and you end up having to retrofit it and rework stuff, and then your play looks like it's retrofitted. It's not very elegant. So I invite you, if you're the type of writer who just wants to sit down and write his play, I want to write my play, here we go, boom, boom, boom. I invite you to do something different. I invite you to build the structure of the play first so you know everything about it, and then write the best play of your life. So I hope this helps. And I invite you to remember that there are principles to playwriting. And when you use these principles to playwriting, you have a better chance of creating a great play. If you don't use the principles of playwriting, you're just wasting your time. You really are, especially if you're a first-time playwright. Yeah, when you have 20 plays under your belt and they're all successful and everything is great, wonderful, then you may want to play with structure. But now I invite you to really work this structure, and write from the structure of your play. And you'll write an amazing, amazing play. This is Ken Wolf, Artistic Director of Manhattan Rep, the host of the Playwriting Podcast. And yes, I was the director and the producer of Powerhouse off-Broadway. And I hope you find this useful for your playwriting career. If you have any questions about anything at all regarding playwriting, please write to me at howtowriteplays@yahoo.com.